The galaxy had forgotten what peace felt like. For more than 60 years, the Thalari Empire and the Terran Federation had burned star systems, shattered worlds, and filled space with drifting wrecks. Every race that watched from the sidelines whispered the same thing. The humans and Thalari will destroy each other before they ever surrender. Princess Kaelin of Thalaria had grown up under the shadow of this endless war. Her homeworld's skies were filled with defense satellites and scars from past bombardments. She was born in a palace of marble and silver, yet she had never known safety. Her childhood lullabies were air raid sirens. By the time she reached adulthood, Kaelin was no longer just a royal figure. She had become one of the most respected peace envoys of her people, trained to speak, negotiate, and understand alien cultures. But even she had failed again and again to end the bloodshed. Every peace attempt had turned into another betrayal, another battle, another funeral. Then one day, an impossible message came from the humans. The Terran Federation offered a union, not of fleets but of hearts. A marriage alliance. The humans proposed that a Thalarian royal would marry a human officer to symbolize peace between their worlds. In return, both governments would declare a formal ceasefire, ending hostilities that had claimed billions of lives. Kaelin had been the one chosen. Her father, Emperor Therax, had summoned her to the throne hall to give her the news. The old ruler's voice was heavy with sorrow. "You are our brightest hope, Kaelin. If this union holds, our people may finally rest." She bowed her head. "And if it fails? Then the flames will consume us all," he said simply. Kaelin accepted her duty without hesitation. Her heart ached, but her spirit was strong. If this was what it took to stop the war, she would do it. Yet deep inside, she wondered what kind of man she would be bound to. A human soldier, one of the so-called DEATHWORLDers who were feared across the galaxy for their brutality and cunning. The human chosen for this alliance was Captain Marcus Hale. He was no prince or politician, but a decorated officer who had survived more battles than anyone his age. The Terran High Command trusted him not because he was gentle, but because he was steady. Even in the chaos of war, Marcus Hale never lost control. When the message reached him, Marcus had been on the frontier, overseeing the evacuation of a burned colony. He stood among the ruins, his armor scarred and his uniform torn, listening to the official order through his comlink. "Captain Marcus Hale, by decision of the Terran Federation Council, you are to represent humanity in a peace union with Princess Kaelin of Thalaria. You will be granted the rank of Commander of Peace Forces, effective immediately." He stood in silence for a long time before replying, "Understood." His second officer, a young man named Carter, looked at him with disbelief. "Sir, you're going to marry an alien princess?" Marcus gave a small smile, one that didn't reach his tired eyes. "If it stops one more planet from burning, I'll marry the whole galaxy." The wedding was held in orbit around a neutral world, watched by millions across the stars. The ceremony took place aboard a massive diplomatic ship, half Thalarian crystal and half Terran steel. Every detail showed the fragile mix of two worlds that had hated each other for so long. Kaelin stood in a silver gown woven with light. Her violet eyes hid the storm in her heart. Marcus stood tall beside her in his black Terran uniform, metal shining on his chest. His face was calm, almost unreadable. When they faced each other, neither smiled. This was not a marriage of love. It was a marriage of necessity, a fragile bridge built over oceans of blood. The High Priest of Thalaria began the vow in the melodic alien tongue. Marcus repeated each line carefully, his accent heavy but sincere. Then when it was his turn, Kaelin spoke the human vows, slow and steady, every word like a promise carved from stone. When the final oath was spoken, the stars outside seemed to grow quiet. The galaxy held its breath. The first weeks of the Union were filled with silence. Kaelin and Marcus lived in the same royal residence on the Thalarian capital, but their rooms were separated by long corridors. They met only during public events, peace conferences, military council meetings, and ceremonies where both were expected to smile before cameras. Kaelin tried to understand this human she had been bound to. Marcus was different from what she expected. He was not cruel, not arrogant, not loud like many humans she had seen on the battlefield. He was quiet. He studied everything, her people, their culture, even their language. When she spoke to him, he always listened carefully, never interrupting. One evening, she found him alone in the palace garden, looking up at Thalaria's twin moons. "You do not sleep much," she said softly. He glanced at her and gave a small nod. "Old habit. Soldiers don't rest easy." Kaelin folded her arms. "Do you regret this? Being here? Being bound to an enemy?" Marcus looked back at the moons. "You were never my enemy, Princess. The war was." His voice was calm, but there was something in it, a deep sadness heavy as gravity. Kaelin didn't know what to say. For the first time, she saw a human not as a monster from the battlefield, but as a person carrying too much pain. But peace was fragile. Whispers spread through both worlds. Many Thalarians called Kaelin a traitor. Some human officers said Marcus had been captured by politics. There were protests on both sides, and far beyond the main systems, in the dark reaches of space, General Varric, a Thalarian warlord who had never accepted the peace, gathered his fleets. He saw Kaelin's union as a betrayal of Thalarian pride. "The humans will never stop," Varric told his captains. "They will use this marriage to weaken us. We must strike before they strike first." His fleet began to move silently toward the border colonies. Back on Thalaria, Kaelin sensed the coming storm. Reports arrived of missing patrols and destroyed outposts. She went to the human embassy and demanded an audience with the Terran Council. But the humans were slow to act. Some thought it was just pirates. Others believed the Thalari Empire was testing them again. Only Marcus believed her. When she showed him the intercepted data, he looked at the holographic map and nodded grimly. "They're not pirates," he said. "That's a war formation." Kaelin's eyes widened. "You trust me?" "I trust what's right," he replied. That was the moment the wall between them began to crumble. For the first time, Kaelin realized that Marcus wasn't just a soldier. He was a protector, someone who would stand between worlds if needed. She began to see what her father had hoped for. That maybe, just maybe, peace was possible if people like Marcus Hale existed. As the suns of Thalaria set behind the palace towers, Kaelin looked out across the glowing city. For the first time in her life, she wondered not what it meant to be Thalarian, but what it meant to be human. Far away in the void between stars, engines burned in silence. The invasion was coming, and soon, Kaelin would see the man she had married, not as a diplomat or symbol of peace, but as something far more powerful. The galaxy would soon learn why humans were feared, and Kaelin would learn why they were respected. The wedding had ended and the galaxy had watched. Yet peace did not come with the ceremony. Kaelin and Marcus lived under the same roof, but the distance between them was wider than any star system. Their marriage was a symbol, a duty, and neither had been offered a choice beyond obedience. Kaelin walked through the palace halls with the grace of a royal, but inside, her mind was restless. She could not forget the countless planets burned, the cities destroyed, the families lost to the war. How could she ever trust a human, even if this one, Marcus, seemed different? Marcus, meanwhile, moved with quiet efficiency through the palace. He learned the layout, the security protocols, the customs, and the chain of command. Every gesture he made was careful, respectful of Thalarian culture. He had learned from past wars that respect earned trust faster than weapons. Their first days together were tense. Public appearances were long and filled with forced smiles. Kaelin sat through meetings with her advisors while Marcus attended human liaisons, learning how to negotiate and plan diplomacy. When they finally spoke in private, the conversations were short, formal, and cautious. One evening, Kaelin found Marcus in the palace library, staring at an old star map of the Thalarian territories. "You study everything," she said, crossing the polished floor. Marcus did not look up. "I must understand this world if I am to protect it," he replied calmly. "And if I am to live here among your people, I must understand them." Kaelin paused. His words carried no arrogance, no anger, only a clear and steady focus. "Even after all the things humans have done?" she asked softly. Marcus lifted his gaze. His eyes were steady, honest. "Even then, the war was not made by all humans, and I am not here to repeat the mistakes of the past." For the first time, Kaelin felt a strange warmth in her chest. Perhaps this human could be different. Perhaps he could be trusted. Yet trust alone could not stop whispers, rumors, and resentment. The Thalarian nobles were quick to call her a traitor. They whispered in the corridors that Kaelin had married the enemy for personal gain, that she had sold her people to save her own life. Some even suggested that she had been seduced by the humans' cunning. On the human side, some officers doubted Marcus's loyalty. Marrying an alien princess? This is a trap, they said. Hale is letting politics blind him. Marcus ignored them. He had seen enough war to know when a plan was worth following. He knew that Kaylin's life, her people, and the fragile peace depended on both of them working together. Kaylin, too, faced her own doubts. She had expected to feel disgust or fear around humans. Instead, she felt curiosity. She watched Marcus carefully. How he treated her guards, how he studied her customs, how he never raised his voice. Slowly, she realized that she was learning more from him than from her advisors. One day, while inspecting the palace's defensive systems, Kaylin and Marcus were interrupted by an urgent message. Princess Kaylin, a young Thalarian officer, reported. Several border colonies have gone silent. No response from patrols. We fear an attack. Kaylin's eyes narrowed. I told the council the Thalarian warlord Varric would act if peace was forced. They dismissed me. Marcus examined the star charts. This is not a minor raid, he said. This is a coordinated strike. If we wait, many more colonies will fall. Kaylin felt a rush of both fear and admiration. Marcus did not hesitate. He immediately contacted the human fleet. His orders were precise, clear, and confident. For the first time, Kaylin saw him not as a diplomat or symbol, but as a commander, someone who could face danger and make split-second decisions that would save lives. You trust me? She asked quietly, though she already knew the answer. I trust what's right, Marcus replied. Her heart pounded. She had been trained to command armies, negotiate treaties, and survive attacks. Yet she felt something she had never felt before, confidence that one man could hold back the storm. The next few days were tense. Kaylin and Marcus moved between Thalarian and human commands, coordinating fleets, alerting civilians, and planning defenses. The Thalarian nobles complained that the princess was overstepping, while human officers whispered that Marcus was bending rules. Neither listened. Their focus was on one goal, to protect the innocent and maintain the fragile peace that still hung by a thread. During a late-night meeting, Kaylin asked, Why do you fight for both sides? Why not just for humans? Marcus looked at her, calm but firm. Because peace is worth fighting for, not just for my people but for all people. I have seen enough suffering to know that neither side wins alone. Kaylin felt her skepticism waver. He was not like the humans she had imagined. He was disciplined, careful, and yet brave in a way she had never expected. Even as they worked together, the threat of General Varric loomed. The warlord had gathered a massive fleet in secret, far beyond the borders of Thalaria. His fleet was strong, ruthless, and determined to crush both humans and Thalarians who dared seek peace. One morning, Kaylin and Marcus stood together on the balcony of the palace, looking out at the stars. You think the council will act before it's too late? Kaylin asked, tension in her voice. Marcus shook his head. No, they will wait, argue, and hope the threat passes. We cannot wait. We must be ready ourselves. Kaylin felt a strange mixture of fear and admiration. He was a human, yet he seemed more capable than anyone she had ever known. And she realized something else. If she was to survive the coming conflict, she would need to trust him completely. That evening, as the twin moons of Thalaria rose, Kaylin sat alone in her chambers, thinking about the man she had married. She had expected fear, anger, or resentment. Instead, she felt something like hope. Marcus was disciplined, unshakable, and brave. He treated her with respect, listened to her advice, and acted without hesitation when danger approached. She realized that the peace they had created was more than a treaty or a wedding. It was the beginning of something new, a bridge between two peoples who had been enemies for decades, and yet, Kaylin knew the peace was fragile. From the shadows of space, the warlord Varric moved closer to his goal. His fleets grew, his plans became bolder, and soon Kaylin and Marcus would be tested like never before. For now, the palace was quiet. The city glittered below them, but Kaylin could feel the tension in the air. It was not a calm before the storm. It was the storm already gathering its strength. She turned to Marcus, who had joined her silently on the balcony. Do you think it will work? She asked softly. Marcus looked at the distant stars, his face calm but determined. It has to work. We do not have another choice, Kaylin nodded. She could see the strength in him, The courage that did not come from weapons or politics, but from something deeper. It was a courage that could inspire thousands, that could turn the tide of war, that could change the galaxy. And as she stood there beside him, Kaylin realized that she had begun to trust the human she had married, not just as a symbol of peace, but as a man who could face impossible odds and survive. The fragile peace held, but it was only the beginning. The real test, Kaylin knew, would come when the war returned to their doorsteps, and she would see Marcus not as a husband bound by duty, but as a warrior unlike any she had ever known. The galaxy held its breath, and the first sparks of the coming fire were already burning in the void. The quiet that had settled over Thalaria was only an illusion. Far beyond the capital, deep in the void, General Varak's fleet moved with deadly purpose. Thousands of Thalarian ships, sleek and dark, spread like a shadow across the stars. They had been hidden in uncharted space for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. On the bridge of the human command ship, Marcus Hale studied the incoming threat with sharp eyes. The sensors had detected movement at the edge of the system, but the scale of it was staggering. Kaylin stood beside him, her violet eyes wide with both fear and anticipation. She had expected spies, pirates, maybe a few rogue ships. She had not expected a fleet. 5,000 ships, she whispered. How can we fight them? Marcus did not flinch. His voice was calm, steady. We do not fight them the way they expect. We fight smart, and we fight where they cannot predict. Their strength is in numbers. Our strength is in precision. Kaylin had watched Marcus handle crises before, but this was different. The fleet they commanded was a fraction of the enemy's size. Every move they made would decide the fate of millions. Prepare the defense grids, Marcus ordered. Deploy scout drones to flank the enemy. Keep the civilians in protective orbitals. We cannot afford mistakes. The human and Thalarian officers moved with disciplined efficiency. Marcus gave orders, and they were followed without question. Kaylin realized something she had not expected. He did not just command with authority, he inspired confidence. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, people trusted him. The first wave of Varak's ships entered the system, appearing like shadows in the starfield. Kaylin's heart pounded as alarms rang across the command bridge. Shields at 60%, a young officer reported. They're faster than predicted. Marcus's hands moved across the console, launching intercept drones and activating gravity traps in the asteroid belt. Divert power to forward shields. Lure them closer. They will overcommit, he instructed. Kaylin watched in awe as Marcus's plan unfolded. The enemy fleet, confident in their superior numbers, followed his baited maneuvers. Small Thalarian destroyers and human fighters darted between them, creating chaos. Asteroids shifted under Marcus's calculated commands, crushing enemy ships against their own formations. This is incredible, Kaylin breathed. He is controlling the battle like a chess game. He isn't just a soldier, one Thalarian officer whispered behind her. He is something more. Hours passed and the battle raged across multiple sectors. Explosions lit the darkness of space like distant stars going nova. Kaylin's eyes never left Marcus. She saw him making split-second decisions, rerouting power, saving ships that were about to be destroyed, and yet staying calm as if the chaos did not exist. At one point, a massive enemy cruiser broke through the human line, aiming for a civilian orbital station. Kaylin's heart jumped. Marcus's voice was calm but sharp. Launch intercept drones. Activate the plasma barrier now. Within seconds, the cruiser was trapped between a field of drones and a magnetic barrier. Its engines overloaded and it exploded in a brilliant fireball. Kaylin's mouth fell open. She had seen humans fight before, but she had never imagined this level of skill. You call this war? She whispered to herself. He fights like a god. As the battle continued, Kaylin realized the humans and Thalarians were working together as never before. Marcus had integrated their tactics, creating a hybrid force that used the speed of human ships and the power of Thalarian technology. Even General Varak seemed surprised. His communications were frantic, trying to coordinate a counterattack. Yet Marcus anticipated his moves, predicting every formation and responding before the enemy could react. Kaylin felt a strange pride, even though the humans had destroyed so much of her world in the past. This man, this human, was saving both her people and his own. By the third day, the battle had reached the outer rim of the system. The enemy fleet was still strong, but the losses were mounting. Marcus knew he could not simply hold them off. He had to end it quickly or risk total destruction. "We need to strike at their command ship," he said. "It is the only way to force a retreat." Kalen swallowed hard. "You mean you are going yourself?" Marcus nodded. "I will lead the boarding team. The fleet cannot survive a prolonged engagement. If we take out their flagship, we win the battle." Kalen's heart leapt into her throat. "It's suicide." "Not if we do it right," Marcus said calmly. "I've calculated every risk." For the first time, Kalen felt fear. Real fear. Not for herself, but for him. Yet she also felt a flicker of hope. If anyone could succeed, it was Marcus Hale. The boarding assault was swift and precise. Human and Thalarian fighters darted between enemy fire, creating cover for the small boarding pods. Kalen watched from the command bridge, her hands gripping the railing. She could hear Marcus's voice over the comms issuing calm, precise instructions as his team advanced onto the enemy ship. Minutes stretched like hours. The bridge grew tense with silence, each crew member waiting for a signal, for news, for a miracle. Finally, the report came through. "Flagship secured. General Varric is contained. Boarding team holding position." Kalen let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Relief washed over her. She could see Marcus now, over the tactical feed, moving with purpose and precision through the enemy ship. He was unharmed, every step calculated, every action efficient. The battle did not end with victory. It was only the beginning of a larger war, but the first major victory had been won. Civilians were saved, fleets survived, and the enemy was forced to retreat. Kalen finally understood what her father and the Terran Council had hoped for in this union. Marcus Hale was not just a soldier or a diplomat. He was the key to bridging the galaxy, the symbol of what humans could achieve. As the fleets regrouped and the damaged ships returned to orbit, Kalen approached Marcus in the command room. His face was calm but tired, eyes scanning the tactical screens as if nothing had happened. "You were amazing," she said softly. Marcus looked up, and for the first time, Kalen noticed the faintest hint of a smile. "We did what had to be done. That is all. But you led them all," she insisted. "You saved countless lives today. I've never seen anyone fight like that." Marcus shrugged. "I was only doing my job. Anyone else would have done the same." Kalen shook her head. "No, not anyone. Not like you." She realized then that her feelings were beginning to change. Respect had grown into something deeper, something she could not yet name. She had seen Marcus fight not for glory, not for power, but for the people he had sworn to protect. That courage, that skill, that unwavering calm. It was awe-inspiring. Night fell on Thalaria, but Kalen could not sleep. She gazed out at the stars, remembering every move Marcus had made, every command he had given. She thought of the fleet, the civilians, the lives saved. She felt a strange mixture of pride and something new. Admiration, trust, and maybe even hope. Somewhere in the galaxy, General Varric was regrouping, plotting, and preparing for the next strike. Kalen knew that the real test was still ahead. But she also knew one thing. With Marcus Hale at her side, there was a chance to end the war, a chance to protect her people, a chance to see a future where humans and Thalarians could live without fear. And as she stood there, under the twin moons of her homeworld, Kalen made a silent promise to herself. She would stand with Marcus, not just as a princess, but as someone who believed in him. Someone who had seen what humans could do when courage, skill, and heart guided them. The invasion had begun, but the story was only starting. The galaxy would soon witness the rise of a force unlike any it had seen before. A human who fought like a god. The galaxy trembled as the fleets approached the binary star system of Caltheris. Two suns blazed in the void, their light turning the surrounding space into a battlefield of fire and shadow. It was here that Marcus Hale had chosen to make his stand. Kalen stood on the observation deck of the human command ship, her violet eyes scanning the distant horizon. Thousands of Thalarian ships loyal to General Varric formed a black wall of menace. The humans and Thalarians loyal to the peace treaty formed a smaller, tighter formation, their engines glowing against the light of the twin suns. "This is it," Kalen whispered, her hand gripping the railing. "There is no turning back now." Marcus appeared beside her, calm and steady. His dark hair reflected the light of the twin suns. "We fight here or we lose everything," he said simply. "Stay close to me. Follow my orders and we survive." Kaylin nodded. She trusted him completely. In these few days, she had seen a side of humans she had never imagined. Courage, strategy, and calmness under pressure, Marcus Hale possessed all three. And now she would see how far his skill could stretch. The battle began with the first strike. Varric's flagship led the charge, a massive warship bristling with cannons and shields. The enemy formation pressed forward, confident in their numbers. Marcus did not panic. Instead, he divided the fleet. Human ships darted left and right. Thalarian cruisers formed defensive barriers and drone swarms created false targets. The enemy opened fire, but Marcus had anticipated their moves. Each blast hit empty space each maneuver predicted. Kaylin watched as Marcus's plan unfolded like a perfect machine. His fleet was smaller but faster and smarter. He used the twin suns to his advantage, weaving ships through their gravity fields, causing enemy vessels to collide or be pulled into fatal orbits. "This is genius," Kaylin breathed. "He's using the stars themselves as weapons." "He isn't just fighting," a Thalarian officer whispered. "He is rewriting the rules of battle." Hours passed. Explosions lit the space between the suns like fireflies caught in a storm. Ships twisted, collided, and vanished, yet Marcus remained calm, his orders precise and unwavering. Then came the pivotal moment. General Varric's flagship aimed directly for the human capital ship, intent on destroying the heart of the fleet. Kaylin's heart raced. "We can't hold them off," she shouted. Marcus's eyes were steady, fixed on the tactical screen. "We don't just hold them off," he said. "We end this." He gave the command to split the fleet. Half of the human and Thalarian ships would lure the enemy into a narrow corridor between the twin suns, while the rest prepared to strike at the flagship. It was dangerous. One miscalculation could destroy both fleets. Kaylin swallowed hard. She trusted him. She had to. The enemy fell for the trap. Varric's ships followed the bait, pressing forward into the corridor of swirling gravitational forces. One by one, enemy cruisers were caught in the sun's gravity, crushed or destroyed by the well-placed human and Thalarian fire. Kaylin watched as Marcus coordinated every move. His voice over the comms was calm, concise, and inspiring. Every officer followed his commands without hesitation, and then came the final phase. Marcus activated a small elite boarding team to take Varric's flagship. He personally led the mission, donning a reinforced suit of armor ready to face the warlord directly. Kaylin's heart leapt into her throat. "He's going alone," she whispered to herself. He could die. The boarding assault was swift and calculated. Marcus's team moved like shadows, using the corridors of the enemy ship to strike with precision. Alarms blared, enemy soldiers scrambled, but Marcus remained calm, leading his team through every obstacle. Kaylin monitored the mission from the command bridge. Each second stretched like an hour. She could see Marcus on the feed, his every movement efficient, every action precise. He was not just a human soldier. He was something more, a force that seemed unstoppable, almost godlike. Finally, Marcus and his team reached Varric's command chamber. The warlord was ready, his guards surrounding him. Yet Marcus moved with unmatched speed and strategy, disabling the guards and confronting Varric directly. "Your war ends here," Marcus said firmly, his voice calm but commanding. Varric sneered, ready to strike, but Marcus anticipated every move. With skill and precision, he disarmed the warlord and forced him to surrender. Kaylin's eyes widened. She had never seen such courage and control. One man had faced an entire enemy flagship and emerged victorious. The flagship's destruction was total. Marcus's team secured the ship and transmitted the surrender to the remaining enemy fleet. Varric's forces, leaderless and demoralized, began retreating into the void. Kaylin exhaled in relief. The battle was over. For the first time in decades, the galaxy witnessed a decisive human-led victory against impossible odds. Marcus returned to the command ship, armor scratched, hair messy, but eyes calm. Kaylin ran to him, unable to contain her emotions. You did it," she said, her voice trembling. "You saved us all." Marcus smiled faintly, brushing off the praise. "We all played our part. That is how victories are won." Kaylin shook her head. "No, you led everyone. You were incredible. I've never seen anyone fight like that. Not a human, not a Thalarian. No one." Marcus looked at her, his calm demeanor unshaken. "I did what had to be done. The rest is history." That night, after the fleet regrouped and repairs began, Kaylin could not sleep. She walked through the quiet halls of the command ship, thinking of every maneuver, every decision Marcus had made. She realized that the man she had married was not just a human soldier. He was a protector, a strategist, and a symbol of courage. His actions had not only saved lives, but had given hope to both humans and Thalarians. And yet there was still danger. General Varric had survived and fragments of his fleet had escaped. Kaylin knew that this battle, however glorious, was only the beginning. The war could flare again at any moment. But she also knew this. As long as Marcus Hale was at the helm, there was a chance. A chance for peace. A chance for survival. A chance for a future where humans and Thalarians could coexist without fear. Kaylin stood at the observation deck looking at the twin suns now settling into calm light. She thought of Marcus not as a symbol or a commander, but as a man, a human who had fought like a god, and she realized something else. Her feelings for him were changing. Respect had grown into something deeper, something she had never expected. Courage, skill, honor, and compassion, all combined in this one man. She was beginning to trust him, not just as a husband or ally, but as someone who could carry the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. In the quiet after the battle, Kaylin and Marcus shared a rare moment of peace. She approached him, hesitant but determined. "You were amazing today," she said softly. Marcus glanced at her, a faint smile forming on his lips. "We did what was necessary, that is all." Kaylin shook her head, her violet eyes shining. "No, you did more than necessary. You led everyone through the impossible. You fought like a god." Marcus looked at her, and for the first time his expression softened. "Perhaps, but I am only human." Kaylin felt a surge of admiration and something else. Awe, wonder, and maybe even the beginnings of trust she had never felt before. The battle of twin suns was over. The enemy fleet had been broken, but the war was far from finished. Kaylin knew that General Varric would return, stronger and more determined than ever. Yet she also knew that Marcus Hale would face whatever came with the same calm, brilliance, and courage he had shown today, and for the first time in decades, she believed that the galaxy might have a chance at lasting peace. The galaxy had held its breath for days. The Battle of Twin Suns had ended in victory for the humans and Thalarians loyal to peace, but the war itself was not yet over. General Varric had survived, his fleet scattered, but he still had ambition and pride burning like fire in his chest. Kaylin stood on the command deck of the repaired human flagship, her eyes scanning the stars. She had seen Marcus lead, fight, and conquer the impossible. She had watched him move with precision and strategy that seemed beyond human ability, and yet as much as she admired him, a part of her still feared for his life. "We can't leave him out there," she said softly to herself, remembering the final moments of the boarding assault. Marcus had led the charge personally, taking the fight directly to Varric's flagship. It was audacious, dangerous, and almost impossible. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert. Sensor readings showed Varric's remnants were regrouping near the asteroid belt of Caltheris. Their numbers were smaller but desperate. They would strike again. Kaylin felt a chill run down her spine. The war was not finished. Not yet. Marcus appeared beside her, calm as ever. "They are regrouping," he said simply. "We must finish this before they strike again." Kaylin nodded. "Are you going with the fleet again?" she asked, worry coloring her voice. Marcus looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "I will lead the final strike. There is no other way to end this war. If we wait more, we'll die." Kaylin felt her heart tighten. She knew he was right, but the thought of losing him was unbearable. Yet she could not stop him. She had to trust him, just as she had learned to trust all the humans who fought under him. The final battle began in the dense asteroid field of Caltheris. Rocks of all sizes floated through space, their paths unpredictable. Marcus used this to his advantage. He divided his fleet into small, fast units, weaving through the asteroids while the enemy pursued, clumsily trying to follow. Kaylin watched in awe as Marcus's strategy unfolded. He anticipated every enemy movement, positioning his forces to strike with precision. Even when an asteroid narrowly missed one of the ships, Marcus was already issuing a command to adjust shields and trajectory. "This is extraordinary," Kaylin whispered. "How does he see everything at once?" A Thalarian officer beside her shook his head. He doesn't just see it. He controls it. He predicts it. This is not normal. He fights like a god, Kalen could not argue. Every move Marcus made, every decision was perfect. The enemy had the numbers, but Marcus had skill, foresight, and courage beyond measure. Hours into the battle, Marcus identified the location of General Varick's command ship. It was smaller than the flagship they had previously destroyed, but heavily armed. "This is it," Marcus said to Kalen. "If we take this ship, we end the war." Kalen's stomach tightened. "And you're going in again?" Marcus gave a faint smile. "Yes, someone has to lead the strike. The fleet cannot fight without direction." Kalen felt fear rise in her chest. She had already seen what he could do. Yet the thought of him facing the enemy alone was terrifying. But she knew there was no stopping him. She had learned that Marcus Hale would not retreat from a battle he believed in. The boarding mission was swift and deadly. Marcus led a small elite team through the corridors of Varick's command ship. Enemy soldiers tried to resist, but Marcus and his team moved with unmatched speed and precision. Kalen watched from the command bridge, the feed showing every action in real time. Marcus was everywhere at once, disabling security systems, redirecting energy to critical areas, and neutralizing the enemy. He moved like a storm, unstoppable and unstoppable, his presence alone inspiring his team to fight with unmatched skill. Finally, Marcus confronted General Varick in the command chamber. The warlord stood, flanked by his guards, ready for a final confrontation. "You cannot win," Varick hissed. Marcus's eyes were steady, calm, and piercing. "This war ends today," he said. "Not for glory, not for pride, but for life itself." The fight was brief but decisive. Marcus disarmed Varick with skill, using speed, strategy, and timing that left the warlord defeated. The enemy guards surrendered or fled. Within moments, Varick was under Marcus's control, and his fleet received the message, "Surrender or be destroyed." The remnants of Varick's fleet had no choice. Leadership lost, morale shattered, and precision attacks devastating their ships, they scattered into the void. For the first time in decades, the galaxy had seen a clear victory led by humans. Kalen's eyes filled with tears as she watched Marcus return from the mission, unharmed but exhausted. His armor was scratched, his uniform torn, but he walked with calm authority. "You did it," Kalen said, running to him. Her voice trembled. "You saved everyone. You fought like a god." Marcus shook his head slightly. "I only did what had to be done. Victory is never about one person." Kalen's violet eyes softened. "No, you led everyone. You inspired them. You risked everything. I have never seen anyone do what you just did. Not a human, not a Thalarian. No one." He looked at her, calm but somehow humbled by her words. "Perhaps, but I am only human." Kalen could only smile, knowing that this human whom she had married for peace had exceeded anything she had imagined. He had become more than a symbol, more than a commander. He was a hero, a savior, and a living testament to human courage. With the war ended, Kalen and Marcus were celebrated across both worlds. The Thalarian Council called him the Warbringer, a title reserved for those who shaped the fate of nations. Humans hailed him as the guardian of peace, the one who had ended a war that had spanned decades. Yet for Kalen, he was simply her husband. The man who had fought like a god, not for fame, but for life, not for power, but for hope. At the ceremonial renewal of the peace treaty, Kalen stood beside him. Her voice echoed across the council chamber. "If this is what humanity truly is," she said, her violet eyes meeting the gaze of Thalarians and humans alike, "then I will never again call them enemies. We have seen courage, wisdom, and heart, and for that I'm grateful." Marcus placed his hand on hers. The gesture was simple, yet it carried the weight of shared battles, mutual respect, and unspoken trust. Months later, as the galaxy began to rebuild, Kalen and Marcus walked together under the twin moons of Thalaria. The skies were clear for the first time in decades, free from smoke, fire, and warships. Kalen turned to Marcus, her heart full. "I married you to end the war," she said softly. "I never imagined I would see you fight like this, like a god." Marcus smiled, his eyes reflecting the twin moons. "I married you to bring peace. Fighting was just part of it. You have seen what humans can do when we fight for the right reason." Kalen nodded, feeling a warmth she had never known before. Courage, trust, and love mingled in her heart. She had seen humanity at its best, not through destruction or conquest, but through bravery, sacrifice, and honor. The war was over. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humans could be underestimated at their peril, and Kaylin had learned something personal and profound, that the human she had married was extraordinary, a man who could inspire, protect, and lead. A man who had fought like a god. Together, they had not only ended a war, they had shown the galaxy that courage, skill, and compassion could bridge any divide. The stars of Thalaria shone brightly that night, a symbol of hope, peace, and the remarkable bond between two worlds. And as Kaylin and Marcus walked side by side, she knew the galaxy would remember their story for generations. For Kaylin, Marcus was more than a hero. He was a partner, a protector, and a man who had changed the fate of countless lives. And for Marcus, Kaylin was more than a princess. She was a witness, a guide, and a symbol of what he had fought to protect. The galaxy had finally seen the human spirit, fierce, fearless, and unbreakable. And it had never been more alive.